We've got a great show for you today where we've been talking about a little bit about loneliness. One of the big challenges that we have in this society is how are we going to be able to solve to bridge the divide? Well, my next guest thinks that she's got a great response to that. Her new book is called The Soul of Civility: Timeless Principles to Heal Society and Ourselves. Her name is Alexandra Hudson, and she's joining us live right now. Good morning, Alexandra. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Good morning, Austin. Great to be here.
Thanks so much for coming on, Alexandra. So, we've been talking a little bit this morning about the problems that people face when it comes to loneliness, when it comes to the challenges of fatherlessness in our society. And when I was reading the description about your new book, you were talking about, how can we sort of bridge the partisan divide here in the United States? That's another one, the polarization. And you got a really exceedingly simple solution for this, which I thought was fascinating. Would you like to share it?
Yes, you're right, Austin, that we often hear today how polarized, how divided we are, especially from elites in our society that lament that we've, fallen from this golden age of unity and civility and decency. And yet I tell an undertold story of the porching revolution that's happening in our country right now at the local, at the grassroots level. And I tell the story of when I moved from a very divided Washington, D.C. I was working in government there, came away very disillusioned, very dispirited about the state of our body politic, and fled Washington to what I thought were the bucolic, rolling hills of the American Midwest, where my husband's from. And one of the first people I met, her name was Joanna Taft. She came up to me one day and said, "Hi, I'm Joanna Taft. Would you like to porch with me?" She said. And I'd never heard the word porching used as a verb before. The
Yeah,
word
I never
porch
heard it.
and so that afternoon, my husband and I went to her home, and she had this gorgeous, turn of the century, great big Victorian and home with a great big veranda. And what I learned is that her front porch was her platform to stage this subtle but powerful revolution that is afoot in our country right now. She intentionally curates people across division, across ethnic, political, geographic divides at the local level, and invites them into this kind of quasi-public space. And that's a social statement that she's making instead of withdrawing to the back patio or within an air-conditioned living room. We're so isolated these days in just how we live our lives, going from house to car to office and back again, that she's staging this revolution and intentionally putting people who differ into proximity with one another and giving them an opportunity just to inhabit the same space, to develop trust and friendship that is the foundation of unity and of friendship that we need so desperately in these lonely and in these divided times. So in my piece in USA Today, I tell this story of the porching revolution afoot that is an undertold story of hope that I think is we can all learn from, because we can all have that disposition of porching, that disposition of civility, that we don't need a porch to do that. We can welcome people into our lives. We can see our individual micro actions as tools to bridge these divides and to be welcoming and hospitable, to making the stranger a friend, making the outsider an insider. So it's exciting and it's hopeful, but it's subtle. And so I was grateful to give these unsung heroes like Joanna across the country the dap that they are long overdue.
I love that. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Petersen. We're glad to have you here. If you're just tuning in today for the very first time and you're enjoying the content that you're watching, make sure you subscribe to the channel that you're watching us on this morning. We're very excited to be featured on Rumble today. We've got 350 people watching us live right now. It's like a huge auditorium full of people, and it keeps going up. I'm glad to have my lovely, beautiful, smoking hot, redheaded libertarian wife, Stephanie, here joining us here for Family Friday. And we like to talk about topics like these because, this is the kind of thing people need to hear, isn't it, Steph?
Interesting. Yes, I actually have a question.
Go ahead,
So
yeah.
I love this idea of porching. So once you're on the porch, how do you conduct yourself? Because conversations can go so wrong so fast. And people can
Yes.
get so defensive when you bring up any political topic.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you navigate that?
It's a great question. I think you're absolutely right, Stephanie, that we use these we're too quick to essentialize and reduce people to one aspect of who they are. And it seems like politics has seeped into every aspect of our lives. In my forthcoming book, The Soul of Civility, Timeless Principles to Heal Society and Ourselves, coming out next month, October 10th, with St. Martin's Press. I talk about my final chapter, how we've misplaced our meaning in politics, and we've allowed temporal ends, political ends, to become our ultimate source of identity, as things like civil society, community, faith, these traditional touchstones of meaning in people's lives have been declining in recent decades. And people have instead turned to public issues and politics as their sources of meaning. So when we disagree on these issues, it's no longer just a disagreeing of the minds. It's like, you're a bad person, and I feel physically and emotionally, psychologically, like I'm under threat, like my identity is under assault because we differ on this issue. And how we're overdoing politics. We've allowed politics to matter too much, and we're overdoing democracy, and we're undermining democracy as a result. So what's beautiful about the porch, to answer your question, it's a relative, not necessarily apolitical. Politics does sometimes creep into the porch, but what's nice is that it's not a solely political place. It's a place where you can get to know people at just the human level, and they're not walking in with these preconceived notions of who the other is, or even who the self is. You're not just your ethnicity or your religion or your politics or where you live or all these other touchstones of how we derive our identity, that you can just get to know someone on a basic friendship level. We're just people on Joanna's porch. And that allows these seeds of trust and friendship to germinate and to flourish. And it's, in my opinion, it's when you have those seeds of friendship that blossom, that you can then move forward to have the more controversial, difficult to grapple with conversations, because you're not going to assume the worst about someone, that just because they have a differing opinion on you, they're not automatically a bad person. That you need that baseline of trust and basic affection to have those essential conversations of our day. There are many important conversations to have. The problem is we're not doing them well. We're not doing justice to our public discourse, to these important issues, because we're all running on empty, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. We're allowing politics to take up too much of our consciousness, and the porching revolution is helping us, reclaim what we can control and how we can each be a part of healing our broken world through one afternoon on the porch or on the stoop, or even just coffee with a friend at a time. Like, you don't need a porch to have this disposition, the disposition of the porching revolution, the disposition of civility, as I talk about in my book.
So you're saying at first, don't jump right into the political chatter, maybe talk more about your personal lives first, and then wait until trust is built, and then be like, okay, now we can talk about these tougher topics.
For Trump, well, I hate you. Let's die. So just one pause for just one moment. Our friend Camelia over in the live stream makes a really good point when she said that in-person conversations are much less likely to go south. And Levin214 agreed on the Rumble chat, said, absolutely, Camelia, most of us aren't as brave face-to-face as we are behind a keyboard. That makes good sense there. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Petersen. We're glad to have you here. It's nice to have such a big audience. We're not used to that. So click like and subscribe to the Wake Up America show and join us every Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. We are a news, talk, and political talk show, but on Fridays, we usually like to lighten things up and talk about a little bit more personal or interpersonal topics like the ones that you're hearing right now. I do see that the chat is interested in talking about some political topics. We'll try and get to those. And at 8 a.m. this morning, we do have our friend Kellyanna Brooking, who's going to talk about the Trump mugshot as Generation Z. She thinks it's cringe. So we'll talk about that. And I saw somebody else said that James O'Keefe dropped a new video, but I just saw it this morning and it's 20 minutes long. So we're not going to be able to get through that. Sorry. I'm speaking to right now to Alexandra Hudson, who is joining us as a suggested guest from the Young Voices Foundation, which always highlights people who have interesting points of view. And Alexandra Hudson's new book is The Soul of Civility, Timeless Principles to Heal Society and Ourselves. Now, you kind of draw on some classical philosophers like Epictetus, as well as modern philosophers like Martin Luther King Jr., as well as your own experience working in the federal government. But here's the thing, Alexandra, when you think about, everybody like has respect for those names and faces. But I guess this is a statement with a question. I mean, how did we get to this point now where we are so tribalized and divided and rather than sitting out on our front porches, we all go to it and hide in our houses or our back porches. Do you think that it's a consequence of the politics as it is, or is it a chicken and egg scenario? One caused the other. Which one caused which? You know what I mean?
It's a great question, Austin. I like to look at history as both caution and comfort. So, history, it's easy for people to say today and feel today like we're in the worst, most divided moment in American public life. And it's true, division is a problem. Otherwise, I wouldn't have written this book. But what I enjoyed learning was that this is not a new problem. This is actually a timeless problem, one that we've been grappling with since we've been around as a species, because we are deeply social. We long for relationship and community. We become fully human. We reach our potential in relationship with others. And yet we're also defined by self-love, morally and biologically. And those two facets of who we are, social and yet defined by self-love, those are in tension. And that is why community and relationship and civilization itself will always be fragile. It's never a foregone conclusion. So and the human condition is the human condition across time and across place. And so it was great. I really enjoyed learning from handbooks from ancient Egypt to ancient Rome to in early American history, and seeing the continuities that are speaking to the same anxieties and the same promise of how to do life together across difference, which is what my book explores. To your point, though, there are many things that make our current moment uniquely bad and different. Like, for example, they didn't have social media back to that 2,800 years ago BC. And that certainly exacerbates some of the darker aspects of the human condition. Stephanie, I think you mentioned anonymity, right? That you're more like, or one of your users, one of your listeners mentioned that we're more likely to be vicious and cruel when we're not confronted with the personhood and dignity of the person on the other side of the screen, or when we have when it's not attached to our reputation, the consequences of what we say. One essential distinction I make in my book is that we've confused civility and politeness, and how we have to disentangle these two terms in order to better do public life together now, and to improve our public discourse. So often people conflate these two terms, but I say we have to distinguish them. I say politeness is etiquette, it's manners, it's a technique, it's behavioral, whereas civility is a disposition of the heart. It's inherently moral. It's a way of seeing our fellow citizens, our fellow human beings, as our moral equals and worthy of respect in light of that, regardless of how deeply we disagree or how deeply we differ on different issues of the day. And key, sometimes actually respecting others, being civil to someone else, requires being impolite. It requires breaking these rules of etiquette, talking about religion and politics. Like, we have to talk about these important things of the day in order to flourish across difference. We have to debate. That's actually a form of respecting someone, not just papering over, polishing over difference and sweeping it under the rug. So I think making this distinction, disentangling civility and politeness, is essential to helping us think more about what we want out of our public life and how we can do life, how we can flourish across difference better.
I like that a lot. Oh,
Question.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
How do you debate in a healthy way? Because I think a lot of us, we do engage in debate, but it goes way wrong too fast. So how would you say you can engage in a healthy, meaningful debate?
And before you answer that, though, Alexandra, hold off on just one second. We do have to say thank you to L Dubs. He just dropped $50 in the tip jar.
Much.
Dang, L Dubs. Appreciate that, brother. Thank you very
Thank
much. That was quite civil of you, wasn't it?
Yes.
Damn decent of you. I don't know.
Polite.
Civil, quite civil and polite. No, wait, we can't use those terms interchangeably anymore. So what was your question there, Stephanie?
How do you have a healthy debate? How can you have a debate that does not go wrong?
It's a great and essential question, Stephanie, that you have to keep civility is about personhood. It's about the dignity, the human dignity of the other that you're interacting with. And so it means seeing them in the fullness of who they are and not just saying, oh my gosh, you are pro-life, you are pro-choice, you have one opinion on this one issue, or you voted this one way, and therefore you are a bad person. We're so quick to make these shortcuts psychologically, that to reduce someone to one aspect of who they are, as opposed to seeing the part in light of the whole. Even the mistake that someone may have made in light of the dignity and personhood and the value they have by virtue of just being human. And that is essential, in our in-person interactions, but especially online as well, and in our digitally mediated world where where our personhood is diminished to some extent. We're interacting virtually now, but it's still not the same as if I were in the room with you and we were having this conversation together. There are a million little micro pieces of information and communication and body language that are missed by not being in the same room, and phone, email, text, all of these social media, all of these ways that we're digitally intermediated. It's easy to forget the fullness and richness and beauty of the dignity and personhood of the other, even those that we disagree with. And that's what civility is about. It's about, what do we owe ourselves and one another by virtue of our common humanity, and what does that look like in practice?
I love it. Alexandra Hudson, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go?
I created $700 worth of gifts, free gifts, to anyone who pre-orders my book. So maybe we can get you that link. It's alexandraohudson.com/, pre-order, and it's on my homepage as well. But so please consider pre-ordering the book and supporting this project. And I'd love to give you these gifts as a thank you. But thanks to you, Austin and Stephanie, for having me on this morning. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks very much,
I can't pass
Alexandra
up free
Hudson.
gifts.
Yeah, we love it. There you go. We'll drop the link over there in Rumble for you as well, so people can head over there. Alexandra Hudson, thank you very much for your time today. Congratulations on the publications of your book, and we look forward to hopefully having you back on the Wake Up America show again some other time.
Thanks so much. Great to be with you.
Thanks very much.